Take Back Your Health Now, Episode 43.
You're listening to the Take Back Your Health Now podcast, the show that interviews the top doctors, athletes, trainers, and entrepreneurs to help you find the holy grail of health. Now here's your host, Dr. Dan Margolin.
Hey, this is Dr. Dan Margolin with another segment of Take Back Your Health Now, where we pull out all the stops in search of health's holy grail. We're very excited to have a wonderful guest today, David Kingsbury. He is an A-list personal trainer that builds Hollywood's best bodies. After opening his own personal training studio at Pinewood Film Studios, he began training actors for film roles. He's been a personal coach to Hugh Jackman, responsible for his unbelievable transformation from his role in Les Miserables to the Wolverine. Jennifer Lawrence for Hunger Games, Michael Fassbender, X-Men, Chris Hemsworth, Ryan Reynolds, Jack Gyllenhaal, and about 50 other celebrities. So Dave, talk to us. Like, how did you get started? What made you want to work with celebrities? Give us the whole timeline here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the space was perfect for me. It was small, it was cheap, and so it was absolutely ideal. And I spent a number of years in this space working with various people on the film productions. So, from anything from people building the sets to the artists to producers and so on and so forth. And after a number of years, I built up a very good kind of relationship with these people, and also a good reputation for delivering results. And
wow.
I was then given the opportunity to start working with the actors.
Wow. So you go in there and you're working with sort of the people behind the scenes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. You get the confidence. They start to see the results. They start to get the confidence. I mean, I got to tell you something. Just for people listening that are business owners and stuff, it's a little bit of a lesson in sort of putting yourself into the right area where you're anticipating this group of people would be potentially your clients, and just starting in that right area. I mean, that's a wonderful story.
Yeah, exactly. And that one of the, obviously with the nature of what I do now, I get a lot of people asking me that how to get into this industry, and really from my point of view is the only way of doing it is by training people in the right areas. So if for example in the UK, if you want to train actors and you live in a city where actors don't live, then you need to move cities. And
right.
It would be the same in the States. So, I've done a lot of work in New York, and if you want to train actors, New York is a fantastic place to be. So, first and foremost, you've got to position yourself in the right location if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and I imagine New York's got to be a little tough in terms of just the rents and stuff like that for somebody just starting out.
Yeah, no, it can be, but there's always opportunities in those situations. We do a lot of home visits for people, because a lot of these guys we look after, they might have their own home gyms and things, and then actually there's zero overheads on training people. So there's always options within each area. You just have to kind of make the right ones work for yourself.
So Dave, let me ask you, so the first time you work with a celebrity, I don't know, can you say who it was, and what was that experience like?
Yeah, so my first experience working with celebrities or actors was kind of on and off a little bit. So I'd be doing a couple of sessions here with someone, and I'd be doing a little bit of food planning for someone else, and maybe helping someone write a training plan for another actor. It was that kind of work. So it was a little bit off and on. So it never really felt, there wasn't like a sudden click where it felt like I was training actors. It was quite a gradual process, which actually in retrospect I'm quite glad it was that, because it sort of gave me time to build up my knowledge and my confidence and
sure.
and also just my ability to work with certain types of people. And but the first film I sort of felt like that I was a celebrity trainer in that sense was a film called Snow White and the Huntsman, because I was essentially hired on that more or less full time to train a number of the cast.
Wow.
And so that was one of my sort of first experiences in that sense, and it was fantastic. And it was a great learning experience for me. And I mean, at the time though, I was an incredibly busy trainer. So at that point in time, I was sort of doing 50 sessions a week, that kind of thing. So I actually more or less took a pay cut for my first job, because I was just looking to get into the industry and get established. So I went from training, I had to cancel a lot of my clients and so on and so forth to become flexible enough to work on the film.
I mean, how do they do that when they have a film going? Do they reserve a space for you, and they say, hey, the actors are going to show up at 7 a.m? Like, how does that work?
there is there's no kind of normal setup on there. Sometimes you might know when they're training. Other times you show up at 6 a.m. and you just sit and wait for your session, and you might not even do a session that day, but you might be there for 14 hours. So
Oh, wow.
You're there to support the cast, and therefore sometimes they'll book sessions, other times they won't. It really depends on the job and the individuals you're working for. Some of the people I've trained, they will book their times exactly, and the session, the minute that session is done, that's it. You're done. You can go home. On other jobs, you might be asked to stay at set all day, and it might turn into a 12, 13, 14-hour day.
So you're immersed in this. I mean, you're not going anywhere. You're there for the duration.
Yeah, you can be, exactly. Yeah. So, that's the thing with this work. There are certain jobs where you have to have 100% commitment to the job, and this is 6-7 days a week potentially as well.
Do they ever come to you and say, hey, listen, we have this actor and he's a little bit overweight or she's a little bit overweight or whatever, and we need this person within the next 3 weeks to look like this? I mean, do they ever set that kind of a specific goal?
I mean, they do set that kind of specific goal, but they do have a better understanding of time frame than that. So in general, they will, when you're dealing with the producers and so on and so forth, they will have a good understanding of the amount of time it takes to, for someone to change their body, because these guys are very experienced. They'll have done it a number of times before. So often if someone is coming to you for those kind of more drastic changes, they'll be coming with several months rather than several weeks.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
It's not very often that you'll be asked to to do major changes in weeks rather than months, because from their point of view, it's unrealistic, and they do have enough understanding of it to know that that's unrealistic.
So they've got that realistic timeline. So it might be a transformation that they give you, let's say 6 months or a year or whatever.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. So, for example, like you were saying before, the transition from Les Mis to the Wolverine, we had sort of 6, 7, 8 months of that at least, throughout the duration of the first film, and then time in between, and then leading into the next film. There's a good chunk of time there for that training essentially, and so generally I'll be hired sort of 3 to 4 months prior to shooting, so it gives me enough time to get the work done without it being too drastic.
I mean, you look at Hugh Jackman in that film. I mean, he was cut. I mean, he was really in some shape. What was a workout like? How did you take him from wherever he started in that 6 months? Give us an idea what a workout would be like with something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, for those kind of results, so for muscle building and then fat loss results, we would work. I'd always work that in 2 phases. So we'd work through the first phase of muscle building. And during that phase, the focus is on kind of heavy lifts and high volume weight training. And we'll be always aiming for high protein and a calorie surplus. So you'd be about 20% over maintenance calories during that entire phase. And that phase could last 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. It really would depend on how much time you've got and then how much time you've got to lean down afterwards. And then that lean down phase, which would come next, would be again, you'd still be the focus on the resistance training, so still getting your heavy weights in and your higher rep weights in to really try and maintain muscle mass. But then there'd be obviously the addition of some cardio work, so we'd do low intensity cardio, some intervals as well, and then the calories would be dropping, so you'd be in a calorie deficit during that entire time. And that period might be sort of 10 weeks, 12 weeks. Again, it would vary depending on how much time you had essentially, and the number of hours in the gym. Again, it's very hard to say, because some of these films have very tight time frames, and you don't have actually very many hours per day to train. So for example, you might only have 1 hour a day with them, and it might be at 4:30 in the morning, because they've got because they have an entire day shooting, and they train in their own time. They don't train in studio time. Unless they're sitting around in between takes and they've got some time, it's not scheduled in, right? So they train in their own time, and because of that, it means you might be doing super early sessions, and because of that, it means you're going to look at reducing the session duration slightly in favor of actually bringing the calories down a little bit. So what it will mean is, it means your training volume might be a little bit less, but you just bring your calories down as well, so you're still getting the results.
Oh, okay. So you're manipulating both the carbohydrates, the proteins, and stuff like that.
Exactly, yeah.
When you're working with a celebrity, right, versus a sort of a regular person, if you will, what's the difference? Like, what is the difference?
I mean, in terms of like the body and and how it responds, there is no difference. We're all built the same. To an extent, we all have our genetic limits. That goes without saying. We all have our and everyone is built slightly different, but they are in general they are no different to normal people or like myself or like anyone else in general.
Right.
But the differences come in sort of I would say the focus on very specific goals. Okay, so one of the biggest things I see in non-actors is that goals can be quite vague, and when goals are vague, they're very hard to achieve, if not impossible to achieve, because in order to plan for a goal, you need to know exactly what it is you're looking to achieve. And for that to be successful, you have to be very structured. Whereas with an actor, you have very, very, very specific goals. And whenever you're working with a specific goal like that, they are much, much easier to achieve because you can plan. You can plan to the hour what you need to be doing. You can really, really focus, and that is, I would say, the number one difference is just the amount of structure that you can put in once your goals are fixed. And I'm talking fixed on like they're fixed by the character they have to look like, they're fixed on the date they have to look like that, and then, they're fixed in every way, so you know exactly what you have to do every single day to achieve them. Whereas for someone else who maybe just wants to get in better shape, like that, there is no plan, there is no plan of action because there is no specific goal. So that would be the number one difference. There are obviously the benefits of being an actor, things like being able to afford a full-time trainer, or the studio generally will pay for a full-time trainer, and also having a chef. But these things are perks, they're not essential. Anyone can get a good training plan, anyone can get a good food plan. The only difference is they have someone else doing prepping the food for them, whereas we have to do it ourselves. But that doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means it's a little bit of extra work. And so as long as we have our goals fixed in the same way and are very specific about when we need to achieve them by, then we can absolutely achieve the same kind of results.
Well, David, let me ask, for people listening, then that sort of gives, I think, a clue as to how they themselves can attain whatever it is that they're trying to do. It's just one, figure out exactly what they are trying to do, and specifically come up with a time frame and say, hey, listen, I want to, like for myself, I'm interested in actually gaining more muscle mass. So, I've got a little bit of a general theory of what I'd like to do by a certain time period. But what you're really saying is, no, make a specific date, really target it out. And then is it almost like this? It's almost easier to work backwards than from that goal. You have a specific goal, you have a date you want to achieve it by, and then obviously you have all this knowledge that you bring to the table that says, well, in order to do that, you're going to have to work out this much, you're going to have to eat these kind of foods, and you can work backwards from that goal. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously your goals have to be realistic within that time frame. There's no point in setting goals that are completely unrealistic. So you have to have an understanding of what is realistic in that time frame and what isn't. But for example, if you did set yourself a date where you wanted to gain as much muscle as you can, and then you could look at potentially how much muscle you'd be looking to gain each week or each month, then you could work back to see how many calories you're going to need to consume, and then how your gym sessions are going to need to progress. I would say for goal setting, fat loss is a little bit easier to sort of manage and to understand as a goal, because it's a little bit easier to plan for in that sense. Muscle building can be a little bit more challenging because there are a few more variables in the sense of how much muscle different individuals can build. So
what is a realistic, like when you're looking at, you hear all these different things, what is the most amount of muscle somebody could gain working out in 6 months or a year? And what is a realistic goal for his weight loss?
Yeah,
I know it varies, but
with the amount of muscle that someone gain, it is going to vary dramatically, depending on their training history, how long, potentially how long they've been training for, their hormone levels, hormone function, testosterone, their insulin sensitivity, their growth hormone, all of these kind of things are going to play a role, and therefore it's somewhat age related. So obviously some people can gain muscle quicker and gain more muscle than other people. So essentially it's more about looking at what as an individual that person can gain. which you can sort of figure out. So if you get a training plan figured out for muscle gain, and a food plan to accompany it, and you look at you potentially look at how much muscle you gain in a 2-week period or a month period in terms of weight gain, then you can kind of assess then for a longer term. What I would say as well is making sure aiming for quality muscle gain. Gaining weight and gaining muscle are two different things. So you will hear stories about people gaining 20 pounds of muscle in 3 months, say, or 25 pounds of muscle in 4 months, or whatever it might be.
Is that actually possible, or is that more fat?
Yeah, exactly. So this is where the quality thing's going to come in. So generally, if it's vast figures, then it's likely to be some fat, or quite a lot of fat accompanying the muscle. What I would say is adding a little bit of fat whilst you're gaining muscle is absolutely fine, because because you're going to be because I work with people in phases, I'm happy for them to gain a little bit of muscle during that process. What that means is it will just mean that their calories are in that surplus, so they are getting enough calories to be gaining muscle. And if someone's gaining if someone isn't gaining weight very quickly, then essentially it means that their calories are not quite high enough. So if they are looking to gain muscle, it's okay for them to be over a little bit, like they're over their surplus a little bit, because it means nothing's going to waste. Whereas in terms of their training and their intensity, the effort they're putting in. Whereas if the results are very slow and they're not gaining anything, then they need to increase their calories. But I would say if adding quality muscle at a number of pounds per month is a realistic goal, and whether that be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it will vary from person to person, but you kind of have to figure that out for yourself in that first period so that you can set those longer term goals.
Are there some ages, like over 50 or over 60, that it's almost impossible to gain muscle, or not really?
It's not going to be impossible, no. But youth does help in muscle building. So, that's generally from a hormone point of view. But by all, it absolutely is no reason not to exercise or not to try to gain muscle because you're older, because you still can. That's a lot of people will compare themselves to certain things, and they'll say, oh, I won't be able to gain as much muscle as that person, or I won't be able to achieve as much as what that person has achieved because I'm older, but like, it doesn't matter. You just have to do you just have to do the best of your ability. You just have to achieve the most that you can achieve, and not worry about comparing that against others. And if you're 60 and you can only gain 3 pounds of muscle, not 5,
right.
That's still like it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
Right. Well, I like what you said too. You said like you take a month, right, and you see, and just I'm maybe putting words in your mouth, but basically you test yourself. You see, well, how much muscle can I gain, and based on what calories? It's almost like an experiment, right? You're doing that for a month, and then you can extrapolate from that and actually start to set more realistic goals for yourself.
Yeah, because one of the big things with fitness is the consistency there. So. By setting yourself a month where you can sort of really work on progress and really work on achieving the most that you can. For one, it's going to give you a great measuring tool, but also it's going to bank you a month of consistent training, consistent nutrition, and a month if you're very consistent for a month, that will go a long way in terms of results. And people can actually achieve much more than they think they can in a short space of time if it's really focused and they're very consistent during that time.
What do you feel about supplements?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of supplements. They're not essential for gaining muscle or dropping body fat by any means, but they're absolutely a useful tool. So they are goal dependent as well. So depending on what someone's goal is, their supplements can be altered to reflect that. So, for example, if someone's looking to gain muscle, then things like creatine, protein powder, potentially a carbohydrate powder, branched chain amino acids. Those kind of supplements would fall really well into it. Also, potentially things like ZMA and D-aspartic acid, those kind of things which are really good for male hormone function and so on and so forth. They work really well for that. Whereas if someone is looking to drop body fat, for example, adding things like L-carnitine or chromium or cinnamon, again, those kind of tools can be really useful for blood sugar, for regulating blood sugar, and also for fat synthesis. So supplements absolutely a useful tool, not essential for getting results, but I believe strongly that they do help you achieve results.
Do you find that sometimes people get overly zealous when they first start working out and either overtrain a body part and undertrain others, or what do you find in terms of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I find that generally when most people start, they overdo it in every aspect, and that's why that's why they start and stop. One of the biggest problems I see with people is consistency, and if you overdo it for a week or two, from a training point of view and from from a food point of view, whether that be overeating or undereating, it makes it almost impossible to maintain. And I see it all the time. With my online training, I've worked with thousands of people over the last few years, and I see it all the time where people say, "Oh, I've done all your training, but it doesn't feel like it's enough, so I've added this, and this."
Right.
But I'm so hungry that I binged on this and I couldn't follow the food plan. And that's the thing, is adding extra exercise doesn't necessarily increase results, but it will certainly increase your appetite. So therefore, what you're then going to have to do is increase your calories, because your calorie expenditure is higher, and then it's all out of balance. Whereas
Wow.
if you can balance, if you can balance your food out and your exercise out at a point where it's not going to have a huge negative impact on your appetite, so you're not ravenous all day and you're eating a sensible amount of calories, long term you're going to get much better results. Whereas if you cut your calories too drastically, and you're hungry all day, the chance of you picking up some food on the way home that's going to put you 500 calories over is massively increased. So
Right, you're stopping at Mickey D's or something like that.
Exactly. Whereas if you get your balance of exercise and training right, and your calorie deficit isn't drastic, then you're good. You drive straight past. Like it really is. It's a balance of the two, and I see it so often where people starting out on it feel like they have to do way too much in order to achieve results, when really what they have to do is just bring that back a little bit, but just stick at it for a lot longer.
Are they better off eating a bunch of small meals or one or two larger meals? How do you feel about that?
So meal frequency or how many meals per day, it's something that I've played around with a lot over the years. I mean, when I qualified as a trainer, like, everyone was on 6 meals a day, 7 meals a day, and for me that just didn't work. It never worked. It just aggravated my digestion and my energy levels, and I wouldn't sleep so well and stuff like that. So I eat 3 meals a day, and I'll have a shake or a snack on my training days. And so in general, I recommend that for most people, that kind of 3 or 4 meals a day, as opposed to 5 or 6. It fits a lot better with people's lifestyles, because it means they can eat kind of normally with their families, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then maybe a snack. And ultimately, I believe it actually achieves better results than an increased meal frequency. I think it allows for better digestion, and ultimately, I just think it just fits better with people's lifestyles.
Dave, how important is sleep in this whole thing?
Yeah, so I mean, sleep is very important, to be fair, and tiredness is a killer when it comes to following a diet and following an exercise plan, from the points of view of willpower. So if someone's ridiculously tired, they haven't been sleeping well, and they're only getting a few hours sleep a night, then the chances of them being able to stick to a calorie reduction, if they're trying to drop body fat, it becomes much more challenging. And also lack of sleep has a really negative impact on hormone function. So your cortisol levels will be elevated, and cortisol is not a good hormone for body composition. It doesn't encourage quality muscle mass, and you're going to struggle to drop body fat so well if your cortisol levels are high.
Right.
So improving sleep quality is one way of improving your results without having to do any extra work, essentially.
That's actually the easier part of it.
The easiest way of improving your performance. Yeah.
I love it. Dave, celebrities, do you find that they're more driven than the average person as well, or is there a different mindset?
So I mean, they are very driven, and but the way I always say talk to people about it is that these guys are they're at the peak. They are the top performers of their industry. And I've worked with a lot of top performers in a lot of different industries, and they are all very, very motivated and all very, very hardworking. You don't become one of the top actors in the world by chance.
Right,
These guys have worked ridiculously hard to get there, and they work harder than most other people you'll ever meet. So their level of motivation is incredibly high, and it reflects in their gym sessions, in the sense that they take themselves as a brand very, very seriously, and and also as they take themselves as an actor or an actress or performer very seriously as well. So if their role requires them to be in a certain shape, then they're going to put the work in, because their role is what matters to them. Likewise, if their brand relies on them being in a certain shape and looking a certain way, they are going to do it. And so it becomes part of their business, it becomes part of their job, and therefore their level of motivation is incredibly high. It may take a little bit of the enjoyment out of it. I'm not sure, but I think it potentially could do. But what it does mean is it means they're incredibly motivated. But
I can see, from your viewpoint, it's got to be a lot easier to work with somebody that is motivated than somebody that you start to feel like you're babysitting all day long. You know what
absolutely, I mean? Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've worked with all kinds of different people. I've worked with everyone, and working with people that are motivated is a completely different. It's a completely different game altogether, because you go from someone who has to motivate and really push someone every day to someone that can just guide someone. To someone who you're being hired for your advice rather than your motivation capability.
Right.
And I mean, for me, that's ideal. It's perfect. And I do always say to people that like with the actors and the film people, if your body's going to be on the marketing material on every billboard in every city, that's motivation.
That's motivation right there.
Yeah,
absolutely. David, as we wind this down, let me ask you. One of the things we always ask is, what is the holy grail of health to our guests? So I'm going to pose that question to you. What if I were to ask you what the holy grail of health is in your opinion? What would that be, sir?
Yeah. So I mean, I think this is a very individual thing, and I think that the holy grail of fitness will vary. With each person that is imagining what it is. From my point of view, is I've experienced a huge amount of sports throughout my life, and every single one of them, at the point I was doing it, for me was the holy grail of fitness. But now reflecting on all of those things, from my personal point of view, I see the holy grail of fitness as being a combination of strength, fitness, and energy and vitality. So I want to have the strength to perform well in the gym, and also to perform everyday tasks safely and effectively. I want to have the fitness to be able to compete in endurance events if I want to, or to run 10K hard, those kind of things. And then I also want to have the energy to run my business, to spend time with my family, all these kind of things. So for me personally, I see it to be a number of things, but I really believe that for each individual person listening to this, they will have their own version of what that is. And I would say whatever that version is, that is what you need to go for, because that's what's right for you, and that's what you need to achieve.
And you would say go for it. I love it.
Absolutely, go for it. You got to go for it. Yeah, you got to do it.
David Kingsbury, how would people find out more about you?
Yes, so if they want to find out about myself and my online training plans, they can visit my website, which is www.davidkingsbury.co.uk. And if they want to have a look at my Instagram, that's Team Kingsbury. So on there, I've got loads of free training advice, free recipes, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm also on Facebook at David Kingsbury Personal Training. And again, just some, daily content going out, blogs, newsletters, motivational stuff, so they can find me in all those places.
David Kingsbury, personal trainer to the stars. Thank you for being on this show, sir.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
This episode is sponsored by New Jersey Foot and Ankle Center in Oradell, New Jersey. Remember, when you have a foot problem, you've got a foot doctor in the family. Weekend and evening appointments are available. Call us at 201-261-9445. Once again, that's 201-261-9445. Thanks for listening. Check out the show notes over at drdanspeaks.com. If you're loving the show, head over to iTunes and leave us a review, and we'll catch you next time.